So these are the 3 slides. And it totally works. We can talk about it more in our session together, but within a quarter, the minimum viable pitch transformed a company and 2x'd their average deal size. And it just took 1 rep to use it after less than an hour of training and show that it works. It's transformative, completely new alchemy. And then because that was recorded, all the other reps could learn how to do it, try it, and they too were transformed. And so that's the way that you drive this kind of change in your organization. So the first slide of a deck will be your title slide, whatever it is right now. And then you have an introduction slide. I didn't cover this in the others. This one's really basic, but this turns out to be pretty transformative because you're just basically setting the stage where you're breaking the seal, you're getting them to talk a little, and you say, let's just have a few quick words to settle in, right? You're doing scope, and you say, your name and what's the focus in your role? You're starting to organize their thinking. You ask them, what do you know about us already, if anything? Because you're allowing them to not pretend like they know a bunch and that they're all organized when they might not. Some people get scheduled a meeting and they forget. Other people will actually tell you what they know, and it's really interesting. It starts to show you where they are in their process. It starts to show you potentially who your competitors are. And you ask, what would you like to get from our time together? This seems simple, but so often people who are pitching assume they know what the goal is of the person they're pitching to. And they have all this content that they've got designed based on that assumption. But sometimes what the person needs is very specific and is very telling. And so sometimes people say, look, I'm not the decision maker. I just need to be able to have this information so I can show to people to see if they're interested to then set up a demo. And so you're going to manage the entire meeting differently based on that. So when you ask someone, what would you like to get from our time together? What would be a big win? Because I want to organize time around that. And then you shut your mouth. You'll be surprised how much people will tell you. Then you have the agenda slide. And this is a departure of many people's agenda slide, because it's not really the content that we're covering, but it is the way we're going to spend time and why. So what you say is, okay, so I've got hours of demos that I could show, lots of product information to geek out on, but to make sure that I use this time well, I suggest we have this agenda. We just did introductions, and I suggest that we, spend some time before getting into all that what we do, is to first create some context together. And we'll use that context to then have a value discussion. So I'm not just going to show you a bunch of stuff, but I'm going to talk about what we do in the context of where it might add value. And my goal will be to get you in a position by the end of this meeting to make a decision. And you purposely pause here. People get emotionally engaged. They're like, a decision? What? I'm not going to make a decision. You're a pushy salesperson. And you say, don't worry, it's not a decision to buy or not. It's a decision, are we aligned or not? I want to make sure you know that it's totally okay if we're not aligned. And what I'm going to tell you in this session together are these 3 main points. We're going to go into details about them. And if we're aligned on these 3 main pillars, you fill in the pillar. It could be just the title. It could be a title and some content underneath it if you want to. And if we're aligned on these, then we'll spend the last 10 minutes on discussing next steps. And typically, these are the 3 main next steps. Now, context. What I've found, the same questions that you are going to need to answer for yourself to decide if this is, a good fit for you, as well as the same questions you need to answer, to different people, stakeholders in your company to get consensus. are the same questions that I need to get answered so I can efficiently and effectively show you what we do in the context of value. So I would like to take some notes here, and I will send these to you afterwards, so you don't have to take notes if you don't want to have a clear reflection of what we discussed today, so that you can remember. And if you need to communicate to anyone internally what we covered, especially if you like what we do and you're trying to get support, you can use this to show them what we covered. So the question I have for you is, what is driving your interest in talking with me and exploring this? And then as they talk, you're actually taking notes. And they might not be good at answering the question, but by defining why buy, essentially why buy anything, you're starting to organize their thinking, okay? And then you go, okay, great, so it sounds good. And it's like, why buy us? And the interesting thing here is they don't know anything about you so far, except what you told them in the decision slide. See how by telling them in the decision slide, it starts to anchor in what you do without burning an entire hour going to all the details. So you say, why buy us? Now, that's kind of an unfair question because you don't know a lot about us. But typically, some people who buy us are, they're really looking for blank, or they're really struggling with blank, or they're really, something like that. What are you struggling with? Another way to do this is, why buy us? That's kind of unfair. You don't know much about us. But the three main business drivers that we solve is X, Y, and Z. Are those business drivers that you're trying to solve? And if you had to prioritize them, what would be your prioritization 1, 2, and 3? Okay. Oh. Okay. Yep. Okay. Yep. Okay. Great. Now, what's driving your timeline? Like, why now? Like, what would happen if you don't do this now? Anything? Because we really we like to go fast, but we don't want to go any faster than you. And, we really like to work with people who this is a top priority. And if it's not, to push it out into the future. Okay, cool. Now, assuming that what we have is a fit and you want this, what does the path look like to success? Like, who else needs to be involved? What kind of information? How would you need to take the information that we discussed today and, bring that internally? Okay, cool. All right, we'll come back to this in the decision slide if we're aligned and we want to talk, further what next steps could be. Great. Okay, and so then you have your map, right? Your offerings at the highest level, either the products you have or the features you have, or it could just be the modules of your demo. And basically, this is where you get to say, okay, based on what you said, and right now you have the context slide fresh in your head, you can say, based on what you said, it sounds like, this first product isn't relevant to you now at this stage. It sounds like this one is, so we'll spend some time on that today. It sounds like, this product isn't very relevant to you and you're happy with your current provider. So, we won't go over that. And, you said that, velocity is really important to you. And so when we go over this part of the product, I will highlight why our product really helps velocity. And yeah, so does that sound fair? And so this is a way that you, again, without going into all the details, can give like the highest level value statements within the frame of what they said was important to them. And you can tell them where they're going. And they might object. They might say, I don't want to see that product. And it's like, interesting, that surprises me. Why? Or they might be like, well, wait a minute, what's that one over there? And then you'd be like, oh, that's our product, this is. They go, oh, I'm interested in seeing that too. You go, oh, interesting. Why? And one of the core concepts is every slide is just circling to get the 3 W's. And you use information from the slide before to, customize how you tell the story on this slide, how you tune it. And it just allows you to get more information, okay? And then what you'll do is potentially have a success story to say, now I really appreciate all the information you've given me. We've got a good map of what we're going to talk about today. And I just want to let you rest assured that what we do really works. Here's a success story. We 2x'd average deal size. And okay, great. Now, and then you go into your core slides. And my suggestion always, you only have a few core slides. Because now that you have context, you can actually tailor those core slides to their needs. Okay? And then at some point, sometimes halfway through the presentation, or at the last 10 minutes, you might say, let's check in to see where we are with the decision. Okay? These were the pillars, and you might add, a little bit more leave behind information. So you say, here are the pillars we covered. There's a little bit more information on these slides than when I first showed you the decision slide because I want you to be able to reflect what we discussed today. I'll send you this presentation. Are we aligned on these things? And you let them say, yeah, we're aligned. And, okay, well, why is that? And you try to get them to tell you in their own words why you are aligned for each of these core pillars. Okay? Now, if you're not aligned, you try to get them to say why you're not aligned. And you don't object and you don't try to fix everything. You're trying to set the table of everything that's what's not aligned. And then when you look at that, you're trying to think, what is most important that I could potentially ask a few questions and then to address? And this is the key thing here. You want to save the last 10 minutes because this is where the real selling really begins, is when they've seen enough that they can now tell you if they're aligned or not. And so you can have 100 slides, you show them 5 to 10, and then once they tell you how you're not aligned, you can either go back to the slide and go deeper, or you can go to what I call back pocket slides at the end of your presentation, or after your second title slide, and go to the specific things that they need to hear to actually realize you're aligned. And then if you can get them to a point where they say they're aligned, you go to the decision slide that talks about next steps. And again, you have the key next steps on top, and then you have some leave behind, more specific next steps. Okay? Now, oftentimes, once you start talking next steps, and this slide anchors the type of discussion, because it's reasonable. If you're aligned, here are next steps that we need to discuss. And this is where you start to add velocity to your deals. You start to shrink sales cycles because you start to organize the prospect in becoming better at getting their needs met. What is the process? And then you have your title slide. Now, what's interesting is you get to the decision slide, you get to the next steps, they'll start to tell you more about next steps, and you can go back to the path to success and actually start to update this. Maybe refine it, maybe not. Okay? And you'll notice the key slides in your presentations become more about workflow, about how to discover more, and then using that discover how to attune your story, your unique value proposition to what you discovered. And then how do you use that attuned story to then drive explicitly a decision-making process? And so typically what happens is you take someone's presentation deck that might be like 30 slides that tells the entire story, just in case something resonates. And you use these slides in your deck and maybe 3 to 5 of your existing slides, the core slides, and then you put the rest after it. And so now you relieve the pressure to get through a lot of slides. And everywhere in your deck, you know what you're doing and why you're trying to do it. And so my challenge to you will be, if you like this and you listen to this in time, try to take these slides, there'll be a link, and make them your own. And we can discuss these in the lecture. Bonus points for anyone that actually tries this in a real conversation with someone. And yeah, thank you for listening. This was a pretty in-depth overview.